Jedi Fallen Order, at its core, was a solid foundation for a trilogy. Quite frankly, a lot of people loved it. A single-player Star Wars game, finally wielding a lightsaber, using the Force in creative ways, and through thoughtful combat. But I just liked it. As if you look hard enough, you see the cracks of the game. Over time, combat becomes uninspired. It took inspiration from games like Tomb Raider and other Souls-like games, but as I took more time to understand it as I did in my previous video, I felt it didn't really surmount to much to really help make the game stand out on its own. Like I mentioned, combat could be unintuitive and seemed more like a sword than actually using a saber, especially when you're fighting against melee enemies. Exploration is fun the first time around, but when backtracking, you are left fighting the same enemy type and configurations in the same 1 to 2 ways on the same path, trying to find one collectible. And the plot, while meaningful to Cal as a character, felt rather pointless, as the narrative was trapped in a very limiting time period in the Star Wars mythos that couldn't really allow for a bold or interesting story to happen. This was an issue shared with Star Wars Battlefront 2's narrative, given how the most interesting part of the story is the Luke Skywalker section, which I think that alone should prove my point. Jedi Survivor has a lot to answer for, especially being a sequel, one that promised to be bigger and better, with a bigger map, more customization, more ways to defeat enemies, but if any of you know me, bigger doesn't always mean better. Does Jedi Survivor fall into that trap? Well, with the lack of presence the game had at any award shows, you would think that many people thought it was. With the buggy launch and the game being unplayable for those on PC at launch, it seemed to be remembered as mainly another example of what's wrong with modern gaming. But for this video, I want to take a look behind that veil and see if the game itself delivers on what it set out to actually be. What I appreciate about both openings of the Jedi games is that they don't rely on exposition or title crawl of the text, but they do it simply through the game itself. Survivor's opening is straight from the main menu screen and transitions to a shot of Cal. You see his face and understand there's been a passage of time since the first game. Unlike the first game where it has Cal hiding in a scrapyard listening to music, he sees the reality of this current situation. What once was the heart of what he believed in, what he fought for, what he stood for, has been twisted into something he feels sorrow when looking at. And it's not explicitly said, it's all conveyed through the acting and the music, which is wonderfully conducted by Stephen Barton and Gordy Haab, transitioning us from the beautiful heights above Courasant, then sinking us down to its cold underbelly.
Sarah's on lockdown. State your business. Believe the rumors. A Jedi. We brought him in alive.
The Senator is expecting us.
You're clear to move along. Wouldn't want to keep the Senator waiting. Yeah. Wish you died like the rest of your kind, traitor.
Hey, you know it's a sign of a good sequel when you have the main protagonist handcuffed and being guided to an objective. Similar to Arkham City, you get to see how things operate here in this part of Coruscant. You see the harassment of civilians, you see the propaganda being showcased, and of course you get harassed. All of this being orchestrated by a senator, which Cal meets in the scene. Well, meeting is probably not the best word.
This relic of a corrupt institution destroyed by its own arrogance.
Arrogance is a trap a lot of us fall into, Senator.
I'm sure the Emperor won't mind if I deliver you to him in pieces.
What? Did you really think you could capture me?
But to no one's surprise, Cal has a plan. That's going well. He's showing confidence not only in how he acts, but also his gameplay.
Thanks, BD.
You'll burn for this.
That's mine.
Which gives us... Wait. What? nearly all of his moves back from the first game? That's like nearly unheard of in the Games with Direct Sequels guidebook. And I love to sing more praise for the game, but we do have a shit to catch, as it has the Empire's cooking recipes or something. It's not important. What is though, is this game's tutorial. Like the first game, we can find chests with customizable lightsaber parts. There are optional paths. Some are closed off that can be marked on your holo map from BD1, and you can use your already established Force abilities from the first game to open up pathways, helping players relearn or introduce these new mechanics to new players in a natural way. While all this knowledge of the game is being built up for the player, he will stumble on a meditation point, which, like the first game, allows for you to regain all health while also respawning enemies. The game will reintroduce a skill tree, or sorry, my fault, I should say trees, as it has evolved, now having 9 distinct ones, dedicated to different stances, health, and the Force. And the game keeps building off of this. First, you are familiar with the single blade stance, which has the same base animations but noticeably different skills to work towards, or having old moves being recontextualized. For example, holding the Force attack button, which is Y on Xbox, you can no longer do a dash, but instead do a direct forward stab at enemies, breaking guard, which is a smart involvement as it addressed the problem I had with Fallen Order's combat, having unintuitive ways of using the Force. I mean, yes, it was engaging, but it looked unnatural at times, and was a pretty easy way to cheese a lot of encounters. Survivor evolves the way the Force is used in combat, and this is only a small portion of that bigger picture, and I'll talk more about that as it becomes more relative in the game. Because this game throws a lot at you in this intro section alone, literally one section later, you will be introduced with the double-bladed stance again, which got a complete overhaul in its base moveset from the first game, having the same level of recontextualization with its skill tree like the single blade stance, notably having repulse being dedicated to just the double-bladed stance skill tree. Also new skills that make it valuable in duels instead of just solely crowd control, allowing for the player to break down an enemy's defense meter easily.
What took you so long?
Oh, you know, just hanging out, taking in the sights.
But now that we've established the old, it's time for the new.
Thanks, Bode.
Part of the job, Kestis.
Bode Akuna is a representation of the ways Survivor enhances its storytelling and gameplay. You now have someone you can consider as a friend to fight alongside you and interact with as you go through missions. Cal can have Bode help with accessing pathways. In combat, though, there's more to consider. If you use certain Force abilities, Bode will follow up with a charged shot, or simply dish out his own combo to other enemies. There's a dedicated input to have him stun multiple enemies if set up correctly, as Bode will do a kick and then throw a stun grenade, giving the player something to consider. And of course, there's team takedowns. As we try to find a way to regroup with the rest of the team, we get the reintroduction of the Force Slow, which is now an ultimate ability. You get saber kills and you charge up the meter. And at first, it may seem a bit underwhelming, and I was initially bummed out as slow was kind of a sick move and it also really helped Cal stand out. But it's a handy tool we'll use later on. The boss fight in this section, if you would even call it that, is just an introduction to an enemy we can fight in the overworld. I mean, at least we get revenge.
That guy really didn't like you.
Don't think he was a fan of you either.
Bode then seems a bit too adamant to get to know me, and well, he's a single father. I'm sure that won't be relevant though, as we got a sick grapple hook. I mean, as all modern sequels does have one, and I'm not complaining. As here, it marks level progression. It works pretty seamlessly with the rest of Cal's reversal kit, and the game uses it very well for platforming scenarios. It's after this we meet up with the team and they are likable and serve no other purpose beyond that. I will say, however, I do like how we get to break into the senator's office. It feels like something straight out of Red Dead, but with the introduction of the mind trick, adding in that Star Wars flair. Okay, look, I lied about the recipes. I figured that would draw you in, But I promise, from here on out, no more lies. At least from me.
What did you expect? You lost. The Republic is dead.
It was killed by politicians just like you.
Do you think I wanted Utapau to join the Empire? The compromises I made created a future for my people.
I've been to Utapau, Senator. They spit your name out.
What
like
this scene highlights is Cal's insistent need to fight back, despite it still looking grim. It can be a positive character trait, but this game highlights the negatives of that throughout its time.
Tastes bitter at first, Cal, but sweetens with time. Free me, and we'll cut a deal.
No, Senator. Someday when your children see this, they'll know the Jedi never stopped fighting for them.
How disappointingly naive.
Hey, the twins are getting that ravenous look. Let's wrap it up before we have another Corrida incident on our hands, yeah?
What about him?
He's coming with us.
Okay, let's take their food to go. It's look clean by comparison.
But this is a great tutorial so far, and it ends with an explosion.
What took you so long? While you've been chasing shadows, I have been stopped!
You have been caught harboring a traitor. Kestis! Open fire!
Get to cover!
Beric and Inquisitor! Look out!
Yes.
While it isn't much of a surprise that these characters weren't going to last long, it does help contextualize the losing battle Cal is facing, and the darkness he'll be facing in this journey.
Cal, we gotta go! Cal, come back! Cal, where you going? Get back here, Cal!
Going through the meat factory does reintroduce new things in terms of exploration, most notably finding things like stim crates. Followed up a bit later, though, is Cal's unconventional approach to using the Force being highlighted, as we are tutorialized to him using the Mind Trick to make an enemy attack another.
Don't see you're expected me to use it like that.
That comment, it highlights what Cal had to do to survive, and even more so later on, where you see him using the same trick Trilla did to him and Seer from the first game, flipping the roles in a way that's honestly really interesting, and now we get to have a full circle moment, with Cal now being able to take on the Ninth Sister, the Ninth Sister head-on in the tutorial, in contrast to Cal getting bullied by her in the first game.
Kestis!
The first phase fight is an evolved version of how she was in the first game, with the evolvedness, if you will, of having different alterations of combos, increased combos, but what I do adore about this fight is how we get a good sense of the rivalry between Cal and the Ninth Sister, with her being very tauntative.
Impressive! But you're hurting bad inside, Kestis. I can sense it. All the guilt you're feeling for those fools you led to their deaths makes you so predictable.
to really get the feeling of being pissed off, in the second phase, she starts doing matrix dodges, so you have to wait to parry her. The third stage, though, is when we are introduced to the dual blade stance. It's kind of symbolic in a way, as the dual blade stance was supposed to be in Fallen Order, but they couldn't finish it in time. Having it introduced in this way to beat a villain from the first game,
like poetry, so if they rhyme.
The stance is all about being aggressive. Enemies are less susceptible to parrying you, and the player can cancel attack animations by tapping the block button. The stance only has one force ability, which is the force parry, which automatically parries any basic melee attack.
Masana! You were a Jedi Knight before you betrayed our order. Your name was Masana Tide. It's time to set you free.
Now on to the easy part, escaping. And there's just a lot of platforming and things about this section that isn't worth talking about, but the benefit of this being an edited video, I can just talk about it in a nonchalant way and just get to the points that are relevant. As we get our ships, we are trying to escape and we go our separate ways because that's not a sign that everything's just gonna go to crap. And guess who died? The person you also don't establish a connection with at all. Wow. While I think this intro is kind of perfect, it doesn't have much interest in justifying the existence of this crew, other than that to be a crew that just dies. That's why I've been jumping over some of these scenes, as they do not hold much weight in the grand scheme of things. It's just as I said before, it's just another way to sort of hammer home Cal's struggle, which I guess is fair. I do like that he has been working with Saw Gerrera, so there is some connective tissue between the two games. Just know this is the weakest part of this game's narrative, and from this point on, this game's narrative proves its worth. And it doesn't take long as we see something, and you know that something is important as it has a dramatic musical riff as the characters stare at it in awe.
What is that?
Due to the damage the Mantis has endured during his escape from Courasant, Cal takes it upon himself to go visit Berice on Koboh. Due to those ship damages, we have to make a quick crash landing. This early section of Koboh really allows for the player to spread their legs a little, not confined to the constant pressure Courasant gave, but to look around, to be curious, find new experiences, and preparing the player. There's a lot to appreciate and discover, very early on actually, as your first enemy encounter will be with battle droids, also accompanied by Bedlam Raiders. I'm sorry. Bed Raiders? Bedlam Raiders? Bed Raiders? But as you progress, the game still keeps the player consistently engaged in the sense of combat, with different battle droid enemy types, such as the Super Battle Droid and the Commander Droids. And all of these enemy types will have the player engage with different combat systems, while also being rewarded for progressing and thinking outside the box with different paths to explore and things to discover. What I appreciate about these different paths is that they can introduce the harder content of the game. First game had something like this with certain open world bosses, but not to the extent of this game. It helps make the game's exploration feel more rewarding, not only because of its harder encounters, but its meaningful exploration, and the rewards that you get from it. such as having these force pickups like the first game, but instead of building up to a specific force or health upgrade, it can now give you between a small but decent amount of force or health and a skill point. Also now there is a crap ton of customization. We now have hair, beard, shirt, jackets, and pants customization. Each clothing customization comes with a color set that can be found, so it gives a player more to look out for when they got a specific piece of clothing they wanted. But yes, as you can tell, customization is one of the most biggest improvements to this game, and it's honestly the best it can be here. What enhanced Koboh and compared to Jedi Fallen Order's planets is the interactivity. You can meet a pit droid, meet prospectors, and talk to them. You can learn about a group of prospectors who were hunted by raiders, and if you pay close attention, there's a tiny narrative to follow. It adds on to the feeling you are a newcomer to a different planet with different people and different problems. For instance, there's a mining accident, and that mining accident led to this tar that you have to keep going through. You also find these roller mines, which you won't find any answers or much information about, but you can find little hints and pieces about who worked on them, where they worked on them, and perhaps why they even worked on them in the first place. But also mechanically, they are pretty fun to mess around with, as you can force pull them and push it in to attack enemies, but you also have to be concerned of the timer, so it keeps you on your toes. And honestly, something like this works really well in the Star Wars universe. The fact Respawn keeps adding cool and unique things to this franchise is honestly really sick. You can use the mines to overcome the tar left behind by the mining work. So everything I told you about the roller mines and the tar is all built up through its gameplay as well, as now you have to use the roller mines to make a hole to make more tar so you can make platforms for you to get to a higher point. This whole section has been a great example of how to do world building while also progressing with the game's narrative and gameplay experience. You got more acclimated with the new enemies, you got acclimated with the new mechanics, and then now you found a way to overcome the problem that was first established when you got to this section. Which helps the player feel that sense of pride and accomplishment Andrew Wilson was talking about. And now you can progress. It's when you finally leave Dredger's Gorge you can see how much further Respawn went with this game on scope and scale. You can feel hints of it early on in Courasant, but here, you can see it. You can explore it. Going down that hill, there are multiple optional paths to take. Depending on how much you explore, you can find more stunning views, and of course things to interact and explore. I do want to talk about something that highlighted the game's exploration improvements for me, which is the early game Rancor fight, which can be found. And it can be found in a multitude of different ways. You could just find it through exploring, or you can talk to a prospector, who tells Cal about the cave it resides in. You go in this cave and there's a slight eerie vibe to it. There are enemies hiding in corners and you can find corpses, giving the impression there's something sinister here. You can find a force echo that alludes to a possible fate for those you hear.
Look at this rib cage. Think the Bedlam Raiders would pay for fossils? Oh no.
And then the fight itself captures the essence of when the Rancor was first introduced in Return of the Jedi. The oppressive nature of its footsteps and its reveal. The mix of slow and fast attacks that can easily one-shot you if you're not careful. And of course, the added touch of being able to use a bone to stun is a nice touch. The fact that this boss fight can be found through the player just exploring the world, and some may not even find it on their first playthrough, or as soon as I did, but it's there. And rewards the player for an experience that we haven't gotten in a Star Wars game for at least 15 years.
So Grease hears about this, right on his doorstep.
Where the game takes us next is Rambler's Reach, which will essentially work as a home base for Cal. It's here where the sort of tone and vibe of Koboh is present, which I think when introducing a whole new planet to the Star Wars mythos, it's essential to establish that early on. This is something that I prefer a lot about the Jedi games over some of the recent Star Wars content. Jakku will never be the Tatooine clone allegations, even though they barely share any similarities, but because Jakku is just a desert graveyard, that graveyard is never explored. We don't really get an understanding of how things work or evolve on Jakku, just that it's here to set the stage for the plot. Tatooine was a place where C-3PO and R2 crash. It's where we meet Han Solo. It's essential to not only the plot, but the character's development, especially of Luke Skywalker. That's why that planet works. With the case of Koboh being the central planet in this game, it has the advantage of where the plot is being surrounded and where it evolves. As you can see, Ramgar's reach grow depending on how much the player chooses to interact with it. The theme that you hear now is the theme you first hear when you reach the town, and the sort of western vibe is set and becomes established within Cal's first interaction here.
Think you can pull a fast one on us?
It was all just a misunderstanding!
Hey! Let him go.
That we cannot do.
In this scene, we are introduced to Ravis, the leader of the Bedlam Raiders. He is upset that Turgle screwed him over, which, I mean, I guess rightfully so. It's fair logic. So, in retaliation to this, he wants to control Alt-Delete Turgle's life. So, Cal, being the good boy he is, he steps in. And we're about to have an epic fight with, a very quick fight.
Impressive.
Next time you want to pick a fight, you go through us.
What a delight to see one of your kind in action after all these years. Noble Jedi Knight, if you stay your hand, I shall withdraw in peace. Be seeing you.
We finally do get to have a proper introduction to the townsfolk. Their leader, Domo Dedra, and of course, Turgle, which I did not mention this, but somehow is a fan favorite, but I mean, I don't get it.
Yes, you did.
Turgle, shut it. We'll keep your secrets safe. Cal.
There's definitely more these characters have to offer, but for right now, let's focus on finding Grease.
In the sand, and if you're dying of thirst, well, our drinks, they ain't the worst. And if you're running from a blaster, better run a little faster. Run to Pyloon Saloon, and we hope we see you soon.
Ah, potential customer. What'll it be?
Nothing. Thanks.
Oh, well, that's a mistake.
I'm looking for an old friend. 4 arms, hairy, big mouth.
Ow! Vertically challenged? You can come out now, old boy. The coast is clear.
I tell you, Monk, the Bedlam Raiders are gonna be the end of this town. We got no hope, zero, zilch, nothing. How you doing, BD? Wait a minute. Cal, Kestis, get over here, you son of a bogling! Oh, it's been a while. I missed you, kid.
Hey.
Let me look at you. You look terrible.
Yeah, it's good to see you too, Grease.
His introduction helps establish the game's status quo. It's been 5 years since the Mantis crew split up, and the conversation between Cal and Grease initially showcases how distant he's become. The eye roll when Seer's mentioned showcases some resentment that may be had for her leaving. When he brings up Marin in the conversation, however, it showcases his feelings towards her without it being said in your face. I want to comment on this acting, as something like this has been showcased in the first game, but not as early on and not as essential to the characters and the relationships, well, at least when establishing them, as it is in this conversation. But there is some holes in their interactions, as later on, the game results to just callbacks, which I guess is fair, as I'd argue Cal and Berice's relationship from the first game is mainly revolved around jokes and not really much in terms of a meaningful heart-to-heart. There was a scene, but it didn't really have much to resonate with Cal's personal journey, especially in comparison to how much more meaningful Marin and Seer, and even Trilla, was to his journey in different ways. I guess he's more like the uncle figure in a sense, and he clearly cares for Cal. I mean, he had a whole room for him, which is like, wow, thanks. And his clothes. Okay, cool. Anyways, sorry, yeah, Cal feels like he's obligated to keep fighting, haunted by his master's last words about holding the line. Now that's a meaningful callback. What is important about this conversation is that this game builds a foundation for Cal to find his own path. The first game pretty much had Cal follow a possible dead man's path, but with this game, it's setting out the promise for Cal to build a new one for himself. Now, I wonder how he'll guide himself to that path, as there is, oh, okay, just, yeah, just like that, okay.
The sooner we get to Greece, the sooner we can... We should check this out.
There's a clear sense of intrigue in this place, the traversal challenges on display and the unique technology used, which reminds Cal of Jedi training. Cal finds a droid, and I'm just confused by how his psychochemistry works. Wait, that can't be how that's spelled, hold on.
Psychometry.
I'm confused as I wonder why it's so clear here, because technically the droid was used by Jedi, so there's some connection to the Jedi, and in turn, their connection to the Force is strong enough to warrant to have Cal see its memories. Or it's just an easy way to provide exposition. We'll never know. But here it establishes some mystery. What happened to this planet? Why did the sky blow up? Who's this Jedi? And oh, this droid looks pretty interesting. It talks funny even. Huh. So we have to get her out to find more answers. It's from here we are introduced to Survivor's new puzzle rooms, known as meditation chambers, which is a new sort of puzzle room. I don't know why I said puzzle room twice in like not even a sentence. Oh, okay. It's here we are introduced to Survivor's new puzzle rooms, known as meditation chambers. This first one is a tutorial which establishes how they work. These puzzle rooms evolve the best aspects of the tombs from the first game, as it promotes thoughtful interaction of the Force within the environment, to then solve problems to open paths, and you are awarded a new collectible type called perks. I think a lot of people overlook perks when talking about the gameplay of Survivor, as they can promote different playstyles like making certain attacks do more damage and other little buffs. Or you can just make the game harder for yourself, by making parry timing shorter but doing more damage to enemies' defense meter, for example. I think this makes replays more valuable, as you can take on the game's hardest challenges with these perks, if you are one of those people who say these games are just too easy. You can get more perk slots from exploring the Jedi chambers along with other specific locations. So we escort Z up the elevator. I really like this scene as it showcases Cal's character progression. Here he's actually connecting with someone, and actually something that is from the past of the Jedi. In a sense, he has a new hope for something, and because of that, he's able to connect with people, to be kind to them, and I think that's one of the biggest strengths of his character.
Well, I have been asleep for a very long time, haven't I, Cal?
Yes. Don't worry. You're not alone. We'll help you get back on your feet.
You might not be wearing a proper attire, but now I am certain you are a Jedi.
Come on.
I don't know anybody named Cal Kestis.
Hey, Grease.
Oh, that Cal Kestis.
Found the gyro.
Anyways, we go back to the saloon and meet with Bode, and it's here where we talk about Tanalor and the significance behind it. Grease tells us rumors about Tanalor, how it was a planet full of riches and treasures, but it's hidden behind the Koboh Abyss. Remember the dramatic rift? Z mentioned about being sent to the Forest Array before being decommissioned. Given the droid's current state, it leaves the task with Cal while Bode and Grease go to fix the Mantis. This gives me a chance to go in depth about the Rambush Reach. For starters, you'll immediately notice that you can interact with a vendor, this being Doma Dendra. She has some pretty solid options on display here, from hair, beard, clothes, and music. There's more ways to invest into Rambush Reach the more you explore the world. Within it, you can find and recruit different NPCs that provide different gameplay opportunities and give you things such as rumors about other side activities as well. They all have unique backgrounds and really interesting stories. But of course, as you recruit more people, you see the bar become more lively. The old buildings in Rambush Reach itself will have some life into them because of your efforts. It makes sense, and it works well for a Star Wars game, especially when you're playing a character like Cal Kestis. As we've established, he wants to help people, that's one of his strengths. And getting more people into town also helps Grease's business. As I mentioned, the buildings become more lively the more you invest into it, and the new openings can lead to unique rewards or to unique gameplay opportunities. Going to the Forest Array, we obviously have to go through a forest, but we are also introduced to a couple of new enemy types along the way. The Balmaw are aggressive, using kicks and bites to defend, combine that with their spit, and they keep you on your toes. These are really fun to fight genuinely, and highlights the overhauls made in the combat design philosophy. See, you can actually knock the Balmaw over with a well-timed force push. Doing this will make it fall over, which makes for a great setup to do easy damage. Further along, you'll find shield trooper enemies, which promotes parrying to eventually make it opening for attacks, or use a force pull to take it off their hands and give it back to them possibly. Once you have eyes on the Forest Array, there's a new component to puzzle solving. There's overgrown Koboh matter throughout the base, and you have to set up these beams to open up pathways around to the Forest Array. I highlight this as the way you interact with these components in particularly will evolve throughout the game. What does evolve now, however, is the mind trick, as you can now mind trick bigger enemy types now, which I find odd to just have as a collectible you just pick up. What if I just didn't get it then? What then? You know, like a bit later, Cal actually starts a meaningful connection. When he's connecting with a Relter via the Force, this initiates a flashback of sorts. It's between Cal and Seer. These are spread throughout the game during moments of growth for Cal.
Seer, I thought...
No, you didn't think. You perceived a threat and reacted.
If the Order had reacted faster, we'd still have a Republic.
He's out of line, but he's right.
Yes. The odds are against us. But they will always be against us. Cal, you can't fight your way out of some situations.
Instead of using the mind trick in a way that was used for harm, he remembers Seer's teachings, which helped him calm the Relter, which can now be used as it's a Zelda glider. These flashbacks are very reminiscent of Jaro Tapal's scenes from the first game, which I think is a neat thing to bring back as it not only works for Cal's development, but also Seer's. But for right now, the Forest Array is the start of a major development in the game's plot. Getting to actually see Tanalor helps us as a player understand the significance of it. This isn't a dream, but an actual memory of someone else's, Dagengara's memories. We get to see him and Centauri Kree's relationship, while also understanding a bit more about the character. He's impatient, he is very aspirational, and that can lead to a lot of character flaws. And these traits set up his character quite well. We won't get the full picture of the High Republic and all these other aspects this game presents, but this sequence helps set up elements of the plot for this game, as we are quickly introduced to the High Republic's big bad, the Nil. From what little we know in the grand scheme of things about the High Republic, is that the Nil were space marauders, but they had unique paths in hyperspace that allowed them to get around the galaxy in unconventional ways, which is most definitely why they made it past the Koboh Abyss. And instead of doing a lackluster cutoff of the scene, they just do the coolest transition out of it.
You're not here. You're not supposed to be here. Release me. Please.
What I love about this first Dagengara scene with Cal is that we as a player more or less expect him to be the bad guy. There's this kind of build up to be had. You're expecting him to have a red lightsaber, but when he uses his lightsaber, it's yellow, so it's a bit up in the air. Then they continue the trend of not doing things typically.
I am back. The order is gone. I must return to Tanalor.
What happened there? How'd you end up here?
We were invaded. I held them at bay as long as I could, but there were too many. The battle was horrific. Still, we weren't beaten. Not yet. Not until the Jedi Council gave the order to abandon Tanalor and then refused to counterattack.
They gave up on it?
Yes. It was my discovery, my home, and they just expected me to throw it away?
Dagon, wait.
I refused to obey and was betrayed by the one I trusted most!
No, stop!
What have you done?
The first Dagengara fight is like his first scene, an introduction. In a similar fashion to Trilla from Jedi Fallen Order, you'll be fighting him throughout this game, each time serving to enhance his character development and gameplay. But as I mentioned, the fight itself is simply an introductory fight, a good test for the player, given the fact it's been a few hours since the last saber fight. He has fast but thoughtful attacks and can close the distance on the player quite easily. He has a bit of a mustache-twirling villain syndrome with his lines, but it's a part of the charm, I suppose.
You dare stand against me? Stop! I am not your enemy!
We're all that's left. What happened to you?
It's in this scene that we learn that Rayvis has an oath to Dagon. The High Republic key that we got from Z, Rayvis was upset about the fake one that Turgle was trying to give him. This revelation culminates a lot about what we've learned about the Bedlam Raiders, so I really appreciate how this was done. Now, Cal has a lot to reflect on. Another Jedi that violently turned to the dark side. Given what little we know at this point about Dagan, they are very similar in some ways, and that'll expand more throughout the story. For example, their desires, their passions. Dagan wanted to set up a new Jedi temple, similar to what Cal wanted to do in the first game. But of course, that didn't happen. Cal just kept on fighting, and eventually pushed away his friends, as Dagan similarly pushed away the Jedi Council. Backtracking back to the Pyloon Saloon is where we're introduced to Nekos. With these, you can traverse steeper hills, but what works about this form of transportation is not just because the maps are bigger, so obviously you need some way to get around, but it also presents new ways to interact with the world in terms of traversal. The Neko can jump, and Cal can follow up with a double jump himself to get to hard-to-reach places. And like I mentioned with steeper slopes, it presents a meaningful way of getting around than just moving a stick forward, but to actually use Nekos to your advantage when pathfinding. I appreciate this, as it's very easy to make this gimmicky. Taking God of War Ragnarok for example. The game introduces open world hub spaces that you can traverse with animals, in this case wolves. But the issue is that the world isn't designed around the wolves. Take the Lake of the Nine for example. It's this big open space, but what is there in it? What paths do you take? What decisions do you make with the wolves? Other than just leading it somewhere and going out and doing a thing. In Jedi Survivor, there's plenty of times where you use a Neko to solve problems or to get up and around places. And they're all very memorable. In a case of God of War Ragnarok, I couldn't tell you. Before meeting up with Bode and Grease, I do want to highlight this conversation between Cal and Z. While it may come off a bit ham-fisted, it does make sense given the fact that Z is catching up on 15 years of lore. And I think these are the words that Cal needs to hear right now.
It's complicated, but we'll find it.
Monk told me what transpired while I was asleep. To think the Jedi Order is no more, that must have been dreadful for you. We have both been through so much, but we must persevere, Cal. After all, what else is there to do?
That's right. You've got room for one more?
I shall remain here, but if you need my counsel, I will be at the saloon. I am very fortunate to have met you, Cal Kestis.
With the Mantis back, we can reconvene with Bode and Grease and get them up to speed. On the Abyss, Tanalor and Dakangera, which inspires the idea of a new place to call home, a place to be safe from the Empire, something that not only Cal and Grease desire, but also Bode with his daughter. But with the lack of information we have on the subject, we head to Jedha to find Seer.
It's about time you paid that lady a visit. All right, I'm gonna make us some food before we go.
As we approach Jedha, we are contacted by a hidden path member who warns us of a sandstorm incoming, forcing us to land away from their base and meet up with a contact. Jedha itself starts off pretty linear, as it's more focused on platforming and making around the harsh terrain. As you pass a point of interest, you start getting hunted by a Skryden, as it's here where there is a couple of optional areas to explore. Along that, you'll find a new enemy type called the what is that name? Sutaban. I say new with quotation marks. This is essentially the same enemy type from Dathomir. It's not a big deal, and the game acknowledges it through a pretty cool way through a Force Echo. It's also here where you can find Force Tears. You can find a couple of others early on, but it's here where I found it in this playthrough, so these are optional challenges that test the player in combat and traversal. And they are exactly that, a challenge. Some of them will force you into using one stance, so you may want to reset your skills to that stance. At least that's what I did. And I love the traversal ones as well. You can see the Titanfall influence making a comeback here, and I couldn't be happier. Some people just give up on some of these, and it's really just a test of your understanding of the game's mechanics. But back to Jedha itself, because as a planet, it's always intrigued me since Rogue One. A planet's whole culture dedicated to the Force and the Jedi is pretty cool. The game doesn't shy away from hiding that, with its architecture and its statues.
Is that Nautilin holding a lightsaber? Reminds me of Master Fisto.
Which you have to use to get around the hostile environment early on. This early section doesn't give you the feeling that you are safe. You'll have pretty close encounters with the Skriton and be swarmed by these little bug things. We get close to the meetup point set up by the hidden path, but the area is surrounded by Imperials. Pushing us further on, we get introduced to the Jet Trooper enemy type, which Cal just brutally murders. Like, okay, you had him after like punch 3, dude. But these enemies mainly just throw grenades at you and shoot from a distance. Like the first game though, the Empire benefits from numbers, so when there's more than 3 of these guys, they require some energy out of you. Alright, oh, Merrin is here.
You been watching me?
Like old times. Surprised to see me.
I thought they'd send someone a bit more, unfamiliar.
I would not be so quick to judge, Cal Kestis. Much has changed since we last saw each other.
I can see that.
Come. My speeder is this way.
Your land speeder? Stormtroopers found it.
Then we will take care of them.
And it looks like they found us too.
Shearmark's mechanically similar to Bode, but with the benefit of her move to stun enemies more accurately. This whole section is to sort of establish where the relationship is at right now. But for Cal specifically to try and reconnect with her.
I thought you were off traveling the galaxy. What are you doing on Jedha?
Jedha is part of the galaxy now.
Good to know.
I visit Seer from time to time. When I heard the Mantis was arriving, I offered to guide you.
We find Merrin's speeder and it's been destroyed. So, Cal suggests using one of Jedha's wildlife, called a Spamble, which The rest of this section consists of the two having small back and forth banter, while also having the player build a connection via gameplay moments.
Are you trying to kill me?
Sorry, I thought...
It's alright, Cal. Stand by. I will fix this.
What are you doing?
Restoring the pattern you threw into chaos.
Incredible. That looked exhausting. You need a break?
The storm is coming. I will rest when we arrive at Seer's base.
Where did you learn that?
Dathomir.
You went home?
Yes. My sisters are gone, but their wisdom remains.
And of course, we go through different combat encounters which then leads us to fighting the Skriton. And here's where like the finisher animation would have played out and it would have been a cool transition, but I just went too hard.
You too.
The Spamble gives us a lift, allowing for the two to take some time to properly catch up. The desert is gorgeous and the ride itself is very calming, the score really bringing it all together. But it's quickly diminished by the sandstorm catching up to us. Merrin guides us to the final combat encounter on Jedha. This reintroduces the ATSTs. What is good about this boss fight is that while it is just another boss to introduce an enemy type, it does help players get used to some of the new attack patterns this enemy type has. Now shooting out 2 rockets at once in different barrage patterns. Also the way Cal takes it out is pretty sick, so I can't complain. We escape the storm, and now the game gives Cal and Merrin's relationship a dedicated cutscene. Cal talks about his fight towards the Empire in a broader sense, fully laying out how stuck he is in this apparently impossible situation. But feels like he can't let it go, as, in his own words,
I think we might have found something special. A place where the Empire can't find us. But it would mean leaving the fight. And well, the fight is all I know.
Cal. Look into the fire. It will warm you. Keep you company on dark, lonesome nights, yes? But left unchecked, it will consume everything in its path. Until there is only ash.
This fire metaphor is a bit broad, but here's how I interpret it. The fire is representative of Cal's heart, how much effort he puts into this fight. But he cares more about the fight than taking care of the fire. He keeps pushing the fire to go on and on. And if he keeps going, there may be nothing left. But that's just a theory. A game theory. This next section may not be too much of a big deal, but I wanted to talk about it anyway, as it has bothered me ever since I first played this game. As Merrin just seems a bit dejected, like avoiding something in a sense.
The weather has cleared. Let's go.
My theory is that due to Cal's dedication to the Jedi, to the fight, Merrin feels like that she can't make that connection that both her and Cal desire. A fear of him leaving and going back to the fight, she doesn't want to build that connection.
Well, we survived our first storm together.
Yes, we did.
Glad we got to see each other again. How long are you staying on Jedha?
I don't know, but I am excited to see Greece.
As we arrive at the front entrance, we meet Eno Cordova in the flesh, and it's honestly very, very nice to see him. The sense of adventure he had and the voice of Tony Amendola provided a very refreshing performance of a Jedi. Having him here also helps strengthen Cal's journey from the first game. Still, another step left to continue our journey is catching up with Cere. We learned that Cere is a part of a secret network called the Hidden Path, which is something that was first introduced in the Kenobi TV show. We learned that it's a secret organization that helps people hide from the Empire.
Like Jedi survivors?
Yes, Cal. What I love about this scene is that it gives Cal a large perspective on the even larger galaxy. We learn from Cere that his efforts helped the Hidden Path grow, helped them rebuild the Jedi Archive, and in turn the Hidden Path also was able to help out Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is a pretty cool way of connecting the mediums.
When he left, thought you'd just given up. I was wrong.
Cal, you were just a child when they sent you off to war. You know, there was a time when I remember that the Jedi were more than just weapons. But we both have our roles to play in this struggle.
The Mantis crew gets back together and Bode and Cal gets everyone up to speed. Eno Cordova learns of two locations Dak and Gara frequented, the Broken Moon and a retreat on Koboh. The player gets to choose between the two to go at their own pace.
Cal, hold on. I've had this since I started freelancing. It's gotten me out of some bad situations.
Bode gives us a blaster of his, which yes, introduces us to the blaster stance. This was the only stance that wasn't showcased in marketing. I appreciate that, as gamers shouldn't have everything told to them to build hype, but I understand with how modern games let us down, people are cautious.
The Master always frowned upon using blasters.
You once said it wasn't the weapon that makes you a Jedi.
It's us against the galaxy, Cal. We've got to use every advantage we can find against the Empire.
Thanks, Bode.
The stance itself has Cal use his saber on one hand, the blaster on the other.
A real stormtrooper won't stay still.
Gotta start somewhere.
There's multiple shots and it can be upgraded to have more. Once you run out, you dish melee damage to regain more shots.
I do not work for Seer.
Highlighting the central focus of melee combat. We are now left with the choice between the two investigation points to go to first. I'll preface this by saying that these two planets doesn't have much going for them in terms of narrative, but they do expand on the gameplay a lot, and that is worth discussing, as it builds upon previously established mechanics that'll enhance the gameplay experience for the player. On the second round of Koboh, we take a router to the devastated settlement. It is here where we have to fight a bounty hunter. This one is essentially a direct ripoff with a new skin, but when defeating it, we learn about the new bounty hunter system. We get greeted by an ex-bounty hunter, Cage, which you could have seen at the saloon earlier, who offers rewards to Cal for finding and defeating the bounty hunters. You can get upgrades such as disabling droids and getting new blaster bolt types by turning in bounty pucks to her. Bounty pucks are essentially like a currency that you get once you defeat bounty hunters. It reminds me a lot of Assassin's Creed Valhalla's kill tree. Here, when you talk to Cage, she'll point you to a location where to look, and taking out these bounty hunters will introduce you to these bigger locations that will have you go through waves of enemies to try and get this one target. There's actually a bit of a narrative to them as well. Overall, I think the system is actually really well done, especially given the fact that this game's framework is just being in a Metroidvania. The reason why this settlement is so, well, devastated is because of a galactic-wide catastrophe called the Emergence, which was caused when a freighter crashed into a Neo ship in hyperspace. The debris hit many parts of the galaxy, primarily the Outer Rim, and is what caused the broken moon to be, well, you guessed it, broken. The destruction of that moon crashed down on Koboh's surface and caused the devastation. The lava that you see overflowed and is being held back by the overgrown Koboh matter. Well, if you're wondering how I know this, it's because the game actually has a really huge database that goes into all these things, which is very helpful when engaging with this game in the long term. Would have been swell if another highly rated sequel had that. Our objective is to reach the high point. Sorry. With the settlement being devastated, we have to use the routers to get to different parts of the High Republic settlement to eventually get our way up, using the technology used by them as we progress. But what caught me off guard with the first chamber you come across is that you hear the Force theme.
But in success, will you also find an ever greater connection to the Force?
What's so compelling about the use of it here is that we experience it through a gameplay portion of the game. Not in a cinematic cutscene, but you hear it while solving the puzzle in this chamber, while you hear Centauri Kree's teachings in the background. As you progress, you get more of the bigger picture of what was being built here. The hope of a new Jedi Order, a very idealistic one that would spread its way of peace across the galaxy. It makes sense to hear this theme here, the Force being an integral part of the Star Wars mythos, and the Jedi. Now here is Cal again reconnecting with the history of the Jedi, of this planet, for his journey that will influence him and those around him in many ways. Not just narratively, but in gameplay. With the introduction of the Koboh Grinder, which adds more significance to BD1, not just for its stims, but utilizing it for puzzle solving as well. At first, it's pretty simple. Just start spreading the Koboh matter from the beam and use it to connect to the overgrown Koboh matter to open up a path or other opportunities. But on the final portion of the climb up, you learn you have to avoid water when using it, which gives the player something to consider when using it. Getting to the top, you're faced with a new enemy type, a guy with a lightsaber. You'll start finding more of these guys throughout areas of the game. They are cool, but I don't know how else they would have had you engage with lightsaber fights, so I'll take what I can get. While exploring the retreat itself, we are loosely following more of Dagon's descent. We see him killing Jedi who stood in his way, and this isn't the most shocking revelation, but it does inform us who Dagon as a person was. And yeah, that's all I have on Devastated Settlement. The Broken Moon is our next location, and it contrasts very nicely with the section we played on Koboh. Here, there's more focus on platforming and using it to your advantage to get around or even surprise enemies, as the game does try to surprise you as well, as this section kind of has some weird horror elements to it. But it makes sense. EA did Dead Space. Dead Space has you in an abandoned ship in all these locations like that, so of course makes sense that they would at least try to implement some influence. And they do the best they can, obviously, but you know, you're just gonna kill them all anyway. But the game does actually throw some pretty interesting surprises at you. For one, the Magna Guard. And my god, these things are a joy to fight. They're very aggressive and agile, and if you go for the finisher, there's a good chance you didn't get its health low enough. As while yeah, you chopped its head off, it still attacks you, even more aggressively. This mechanic gives the player some decisions to make in combat. Instead of mindlessly swinging and waiting for a finisher, you may want to use different abilities in your arsenal to not deal with that phase of the enemy. I think it's really cool, and they expand upon it more later on. But beyond that, Broken Moon doesn't have much to say beyond its unique gameplay opportunities, as right now in the story, it isn't very clear what the purpose of it is, but they'll lay the foundations. As we see that while it's broken, the emergence hit the moon and the debris from the moon hit Koboh, as we've already established. You see the beam from the Force Ray arrive here, but you can't fully investigate it as the raiders lock you out, so you're led to go in another direction. You fight another lightsaber boss, which then gives Cal the crossguard stance, which is just a powerhouse. The most risky of the stances next to dual wield, with swing moves that are powerful but slow. It has the best defensive stats of the game and very powerful force abilities. We find another compass, and it's here that we learn that it was Dak that tried out the course of Tanalor. It makes sense given how passionate he is. Heading back to Jedha, returning to Ina Cordova with our findings, we are alerted of Imperial presence at one of the Hidden Path safe houses. Bode stays behind, and Marin comes with us.
Bring back Aramias.
You got it.
And no heroics.
With this one? No promises.
I think she was talking to you.
Shall we continue?
We navigate through the desert, but as we approach the safe house, the Empire has already made their assault. We take shortcuts to get to the safe house. I get fucked up by these scarab things. The shortcut takes us to this location called the Pilgrim's Path. Marin goes off to distract the Empire, and I do want to highlight the Pilgrim's Path and how it contextualizes Cal's journey, his personal growth throughout the section.
Just you and me again. Welcome, traveler. Though your journey started long ago. Huh.
According to the databank, the path has spiritual significance, as there's many pilgrims that goes to seek enlightenment and guidance from the Force. There's one line from the description that I'll quote, but from adversity often springs tradition. That is the journey that you as a player, Cal, go on. And it's here where elements from both Koboh and the Broken Moon come into play, with a focus on traversal and puzzle solving. Eventually, we are forced to be guided by the wind, not just because flags were left by previous travelers along the way, but because the wind itself is blocking the path, so you have to move around it. You have to provide yourself cover to continue along the path. And of course, with the gameplay enhancements, we are introduced to a new enemy type known as the Destroyers, and I hate them. Even to this day, I do not know how to properly counter them. Maybe because I'm using a dual blade stance and I'm not using the hard-hitting stances, and even when there's just two of them at least, it's just, I'm dead. As you progress along the Pilgrim's Path, you start using the Force to manipulate the wind to help progress. Cal makes a comment that it sounds like music, which I don't have footage of as I wasn't recording that, but you believe me, right? There's just no, why would I lie about that? I mentioned that as you find a tomb, and if you solve the puzzle inside, you learn that the wind chimes represent all the people that died in embracing the ways of the Force. This adds more weight to the path we take. We later on meet up with Marin, and this is the first time I've seen this finisher. It's kind of cool.
The Empire find a way into the temple yet?
No. But I have heard imps talking of a new excavation machine.
Let's move. Hear that?
The ruins are singing.
It's coming from that chamber.
Then you must find a way in.
Now or never.
We are in a chamber that Cal acknowledges is very strong with the Force.
This place is strong in the Force.
Thank you, Cal. Trying to make our way around, we are trapped in a storm of our own making, and we jump and die. We die into another Seer flashback, This one commenting on Cal's brashness and how his fears define his actions.
You never give up. And that's what inspires all of us. But you have to remember that where you lead, they will follow.
I know I've been pushing recently, but ever since Grease got
What happened
hurt...
to Grease is not your fault. But ever since then, you've been reckless.
I keep worrying about something bad happening to one of you.
It's good to acknowledge your fear. But don't let it determine your path. Focus on the moment. Choose your direction and act with certainty. And trust that, whatever the odds, you'll pull through. Cal, trust yourself.
Trust in the Force.
Exactly.
Force Dash is a phenomenal addition to the game, giving the player a whole new way to engage with traversal.
Back now. Focus on the moment and push through.
What's great about it is that there's different ways to do this input. You can double jump into a dash, or you can jump dash into the second jump. This may not seem like a big deal now, but the game pushes you to think about how you input this command. As this early section, of course, is just allowing the player to get more comfortable with using it. Beyond that, this section of the game is really strong in terms of level design, promoting the use of the Force Dash to get around the play space to take out enemies quickly, and has a really cool puzzle as well.
Easy now. See your Jedha sent me.
Master Jedha, you use the Force, you're Cal Kestis.
It's time to go. The Empire's closing in.
Yes, which is why this must make it back to Master Jedha. These contact codes cannot fall into the hands of the Empire.
It's here the game pushes Cal by being in a position where he cannot save someone again, but with how it pushes the gameplay on the player as well, with the introduction of Merrin's charm. You first see it and think, oh cool, I can go through the laser gates now, which is true, but how it's used in traversal is just brilliant. When dashing through a laser gate, it extends your jump. Combine this with this game's phenomenal level design and it pushes the player to chain those moves together. The game takes advantage of this as you are narrowly avoiding the mining robot. As you escape with Merrin, you face off multiple waves of enemies together, which helps further build up to the climax. And man, what a phenomenal showcase of what Respawn can do with its characters and gameplay.
Dead end!
We make a stand?
Do you trust me?
Of course. What are you up to?
No time to explain. Do you trust me?
Yes. Is that for luck?
No. For me. Jump through, Cal! Now!
This is what this mission has been leading up to. From the mechanics, to the world building, surrounding the path, how it all builds up, how the way Cal engages with the puzzles evolves throughout this mission, leading to use what he has attained and work together with someone he cares for in a set piece that puts everything he and the player learned to the test. The set piece itself is nothing but stellar, with very engaging platforming, being chased by ties, dodging their blast of fire, leading to such a stellar finale. This whole section is everything I wanted from this franchise. I could end the video here and tell you to play this game and I'd be satisfied, as this is how you evolve a game from being just another game or another Star Wars product. And the best part about it is that we are not even done.
How did you do that?
A ritual I learned when I returned to Dathomir. It is taxing.
You okay?
I am fine.
Come on. Let's get these coats to see.
After narrowly surviving, Cal and Merrin's relationship has now taken a new direction. A new path, if you will. But before heading back, you are actually free to explore this open desert with Merrin. It's called the Narkis Desert, by the way. And there's a few nice tidbits about it. You get to ride the Spaniels around freely. There's a bunch of Imperial patrols mixed in with the planet's fauna, so combat encounters can be fresh and interesting. Along with that, there's a few puzzle challenges around the map Cordova directs you towards. There are 3 of these puzzle challenges, and they all have you manipulate the environment using the Force to then get rewarded with a perk slot, which is pretty huge. I like these challenges as they're not condensed in these small rooms, but in these open spaces that allows a player to look at the environment from a more broader sense. Combined with the rewards of the perk slot, you also get rewarded with some insight about Cordova as a person, which I think is really cool. I mean, maybe you don't, but I mean, I do. Returning back to Seer with the contact codes that Brother Armaias gave us, we get caught up to speed on all things Dak and Gera. Cordova and Bo did research on Tanalor, and they confirmed things that I've already established in this video. How the settlement on Koboh was used to research the Abyss, how Dak and Gera was the one that charted out the course that led to Tanalor, which in turn made the compasses that we've been collecting, and how all that got destroyed due to the Space Marauders. None of the compasses that we gave Cordova work, but he found a few more, so that continues our search. But now that everything about the High Republic and Tanalor have been confirmed, it now gives Cal and everyone else in the group a new sense of hope.
No. This place needs me. The hidden path needs me.
Cordova?
I'm sorry, my friend. But for now, my place is on Jedha with Seer. Let me prepare a data stick so you'll have access to our research wherever your journey takes you.
Let me guess. You're staying too.
When we first met, I thought that what we shared was unique. Survivors, fighting together against the Empire who took our families.
Yeah. You helped me realize I wasn't alone.
As did you. But there is a galaxy full of people who have suffered as we have. It's as Seer said. Perhaps you have found a sanctuary for them.
Perhaps. If we can get to it.
I will join you. Besides, it's been far too long since I've made Grease's hair stand on end.
See you back on the Mantis night, sister.
Returning to Koboh, we learned that the raiders, raided Pyloon's saloon and took Z. Clearly wanting more information out of her. They took her to their base, which is an old, crashed Lucrehulk. In order to protect the civilians in the saloon, just in case, Merrin stays behind while Bode and Cal go into the Lucrehulk and to get Z. The area leading out to it isn't anything crazy, it is just a big swamp area which doesn't really do much for you yet as you haven't unlocked certain abilities, but we'll get to that later. What matters is, The Lucrehulk, come on. We get to climb in it, we're inside of it, and wait, is that Rolly Boys? Man. And this mission is such a highlight not because of the fact that we are in a Lucrehulk, but I haven't mentioned how the ship was recontextualized for the Bedlam Raiders. They have this hut space that they live in, and we get a sense of how things operate here, and how they use old battle droid parts to modify the old droids. We find 2 active MTT droid carriers, so we have to face off a gauntlet of them and the Bedlam Raiders. It's honestly a great gameplay section all around, with great platforming, memorable dialogue and interactions between Cal and Bode, and of course memorable combat encounters, and as they introduce a bigger Bedlam Raider, bigger axe and everything.
Good to see you.
Likewise. Does anyone need a hammer that size?
Doesn't need it anymore.
There's also this interaction between Cal and Bode that I like a lot, as obviously they're both very different people, but Bode is pushing for Cal and Merrin to be together. But obviously Cal is bounded by the Jedi Code, Bode however is not, as it makes sense as we know that he had a wife and has a daughter, so we know that what he's saying is genuine. This conversation will come into play later. I just like it as it shows how different these two are, yet they still come together in their own way.
What's that supposed to mean?
It means trust your heart. Things are only getting worse out there. Life is precious. And so is happiness.
I wish it were that simple.
It is that simple. If you see a future with Merrin, embrace it.
I don't understand. I can't just... Bode. Hey, clankers! Over here. A little further. Perfect.
Thanks. I'll look for another way around. You find that droid. And stay alive.
Pressing on further, trying to find a way back to Bode, the game yet again doesn't shy away from its light horror elements. We get a minor jump scare from Ravis, which serves as a really cool introduction to his powers, as we already established a bit of his personality. And then we get hit with a certified Star Wars classic moment.
Nice one, BD.
Forcing us to go deeper down the Lucrehulk, and having us trapped in a bind, leading us to another Seer flashback. This one's a bit disappointing as it doesn't do much in terms of growing Cal's character or informing the narrative in any way. It informs the ability quite nicely, but it doesn't do much to connect with the personal journey.
That was clever.
Sometimes the solution to a problem lies in how it's framed. Always consider the situation from multiple angles.
However, Force Lift and Slam are phenomenal additions to the game, now opening literal new doors of opportunity.
Always giving me a new perspective, eh, Seer? I'm good, buddy. Let's go.
This early section serves as a tutorial on how to use your abilities to your advantage in the environment, lifting objects for boost, lowering them for a handhold, and also looking for opportunities in the environment to use against enemies. It is a great addition, like I said, but I only wish it was faster, as you leave yourself vulnerable, so I mainly attempt to use it to set up for other attacks, like a Force Lift into a Saber Throw, for example. This ability, like all the other abilities that we've learned, marks a level of progression, now giving us a way to reach Z. As we hop on the elevator, we eavesdrop on Dakin and Ravis. It's here we get to peek inside their established relationship with one another.
After you have it, I will consider my oath to you fulfilled.
What then, old friend?
The galaxy has changed. There are many wars, but little honor to be won from them.
Once we are on Tanalor, perhaps we can dream up a new war.
You and I.
Perhaps.
Something about this conversation I want to highlight is the fact that Dagan wants to keep Z, not destroy it. Repurpose her to serve him as it did for Centauri Kree, highlighting the parallels between him and Cal, both of which hold on to the past in their own way. These parallels are also highlighted more in the next scene as we try to free Z.
That droid is mine.
I suppose I'll rescue myself.
So you survived Ravis. How?
The usual.
What I love about this scene is how both Cal and Dagan are essentially at the opposite ends of the spectrum for each other. Both obsessed with Tanalor, users of their own past to define and drive themselves going forward, to their future, to their goals.
How arrogant. That you would presume to know what drives me?
What I can see is your obsession with Tanalor has blinded you. Whatever happened, you can't change the past. Trust me on that one.
Perhaps you're right. The past is a chain. I must sever it completely. The tuner is mine! The droid is mine! Tanalor is mine!
Master Creech have left you in that tank to rot!
The second Dagan fight, similar to how Trillo worked from Jedi Fallen Order, is an evolved version of the first time you fight him. He now uses both sabers to do unrelenting combos, both dual-bladed and double-bladed. It's best to learn how to parry these attacks, but if you equip yourself with the dual-blade stance, you'll have the opportunity to counter him, giving you an easy opportunity to disrupt his chain attacks. With the added fact you can also interrupt his counter move he does to you with how fast the dual blade animations are, it just further cements that dual blade is the unsung hero of this fight for me. All around a good fight, highlighting the involvement of the game as a whole. I think my only issue is that it doesn't really present many opportunities to utilize the new force abilities that you just acquired. You see it in action in this cutscene, which is, a phenomenal cutscene, but it would have been so much more rewarding and satisfying to be able to use it in a fight in a creative way in the environment against Dagan. I think that would have been cool.
You're not getting away that easy.
Thanks.
Two warriors at the height of their powers, bound in brotherhood. This is the stuff of legends.
Z.
I got her. Meet you up there.
We get Z and make an easy escape back out with the escape pods. While it makes sense to be able to have a quick way back after the entire gauntlet we went through, I do also like that it highlights how Cal still holds on to his past, his hatred towards escape pods. Which makes sense given, But with that ends our third round of Koboh. But before backtracking to the ship, you actually have a good ways to go. Actually, you end up going back from where you began. And it's here where the game has a full circle moment, if you will, as a lot of the locations that you could not access initially now becomes accessible. You can now help out the pit droid, you can now access whole new locations and routes that leads to whole new narrative and gameplay opportunities. One of which you can find is in these caverns where you can learn more about Ravis and his backstory. There were actually a few tidbits throughout the game through Force Echoes, but it's here you get a full idea like what happened to him between the time he was captured to the time he was free. We learned that it was due to Order 66 that led to his freedom. He was able to escape through the massacre, which then in turn led to him building up the Bedlam Raiders. Honestly, the fact that there's so much meaningful content hidden behind the Force Lift and Slam, it honestly disregards my issue with it. that being the lack of combat utility the abilities had. But with that being said, that ends our time with Koboh this round. But now, let us head over to Broken Moon to finally face off Rayvis. Before we do arrive to the Broken Moon though, I do want to highlight this moment here as we arrive. There's this little moment here where Bode actively opposes the plan to get past the Vulture Droids, because he doesn't know about Merrin's power, which is fair, but it's the fact even though Cal says to trust her, he still is opposed to it. It's actions like this that helps showcase traits of the character without it being outright said. And this example will be relevant in the latter part of this game.
Jetpack, man the guns.
Copy that.
Oh, and I might need some of your blood. In case I get tired.
This is the final time where Broken Moon is relevant. The objective is simple, find Rayvis, who is at the other side of the facility. Doing that requires the player to go through the firing cannon of the array, which pushes timing and situational awareness to get through. And in between the traversal challenges, you have to take out enemies along the way. Once you arrive at the main lab, you realize, geez, this is such a safety hazard. But we also get a clear understanding of what happened between Dakin Gera and Centauri Crete, more specifically learning that it was her that both cut off his arm and put him in a Bacta tank. That's tough love. Anyways, we get a traversal upgrade, which, I mean, that's all it is on its own. It's just really nothing. It's only useful for progressing through certain open world challenges, but it becomes really cool and relevant later on, but I'll get to that. On to the Rayvis fight itself, we get a quick conversation between Cal and him. It is here where he explains that Dakin bested him in combat, and in turn, he served under him. Dakin was betrayed by the Jedi, of course they went for Rayvis, but they did not give him an honorable death. So understandably so, he has some resentment towards the Jedi, and of course, wants to have this fight with Cal. But as we established, it was due to Order 66 that led to his freedom. And for Cal, Order 66 led to his downfall, led to him hiding. But it eventually led these two together, allowing Rayvis to have the opportunity to have that warrior's death that he desires.
Where's the compass, Rayvis?
I owe you nothing, Jedi! If you want that knowledge from me, you're gonna have to fight for it.
Very well.
Now, Rayvis' fight itself can feel very, very imposing. His attack strings are slow, but it takes some mastery to get the parries down. If you try to keep your distance from him, he is going to find ways to contest you. He has insane range capabilities with his blaster and also his missile barrage. So you are more or less forced to go up close and personal with him, even with the blaster stance. I found using the force parry against his unblockable attacks really helped with making counters. And while the fight itself isn't the most grandeur, given everything that we learned about Rayvis, it still feels very satisfying. Rayvis is such a mechanically interesting character that challenges the player's knowledge on the combat, and that alone makes me want to give him that warrior's death that he so desires. Rayvis yields and Cal asks where is the compass. We learn that it's at the observatory on Koboh, and Rayvis being here helped activate the observatory. I do like that Cal wants to spare Rayvis, but obviously Rayvis is under personal guise, so he could just resent the Jedi and wants his warriors
We can take on Dagon together.
I will not, Jedi. After all these centuries, I still dream of Tanalor. I had hoped to see it again, but... oh, that is not to be. This Dakin Gera stands in your way.
You don't have to do this.
Only one of you will reach Tanalor. Jedi, give me my warrior's death.
With Rayvis out of the way, it now leads us to go back to Koboh to find Dakin Gera and get the final compass. Once we head back to the ship, Cal is left pondering on his actions. After seeing what happened between Centauri Kree and Dagan Gera, he is concerned that he will end up following the same fate as Dagan, given his own obsession with Tanalor and the fight against the Empire. Merrin comes and gives him some reassurance, letting him know that his friends and his allies, including herself, are there for him and will help him if he strays too far from the path. I like this scene as it helps contextualize Cal's arc going forward, while also building up Cal and Merrin's relationship. The forefront of Koboh will have us go to a new location, Prospector's Folly. Going through that will lead us to the observatory to confront Dagan Gera. Prospector's Folly is such a standout location. It starts off very linear, but it expands a bit as you go through interconnected pathways to try and reach higher up to the mountain. There are no objective markers, just points of interest to guide you, one of which being the crashed Imperial shuttle. Investigating it is actually pretty neat as you have to take out some guards outside of it, go inside the ship itself, crawl through it and eventually obtain a new upgrade for BD-1, the Electro Dart. How it works is that when you're aiming down sights with BD-1, you get to select the Electro Dart, which then can be used to activate electronics. It's very much a progression-based tool, but you could have actually picked it up a few hours earlier, which I appreciate. But a main highlight of this climb up is going through the Imperial base, as there are an overwhelming amount of Imperials you have to fight through. A true gauntlet where it puts the player to the test as it throws waves of enemies at you. From jet troopers to rocket troopers and yeah, you guessed it, these fuckers. You think that'll be all, but no. The fight with Rick the Door Technician is something else entirely. It holds so much weight. All those closed doors from the first game to now, it's all him. He's the door technician. He's the guy that has blocked our paths. He's the guy that has put us through hours of backtracking. This guy here, and he needs to be put down. And the fight itself is just, so immaculate. The music, the voice work from Yuri Lowenthal, and the combos that he can hit is just ridiculous. I cannot believe how well designed this is. This is some of the best work I've seen for any game, in fact. One of a kind. But now we are at the peak of the mountain. It's here we can see everything you've done come together here. Koboh below, the arrays from the forest, and the lab on the broken moon, all leading to the observatory. And you get to jump, no, even fly over it all, seeing both the Empire and the Raiders fight in the skies, everything now clashing together for what feels like an explosive finale. Once you arrive at the observatory, you fight through waves of the Raiders, which is a nice showcase of how poorly put together the Empire really is when faced against people in an even playing field. This sense of finality I keep mentioning is built up even more with the inclusion of Burton.
Had to swat a few bedlam flies to make a landing.
No problem. We got a whole swarm of them up ahead.
Nah. You ready for this, brother?
Let's get that compass.
The dialogue between him and Cal as you interact with the environment helps further the sense these two have been on this journey together. And the game throws fun combat challenges at you, all leading to Dagan Gera, the last piece to the puzzle, the little key to Tanalor. His discovery is what led all of us here. Dagan is now in a corner, trapped with no friends, allies, and purpose.
I guess he got the message a few years too late.
If Centauri had only stood with me, we could have convinced the Council that Tanalor was worth the sacrifice. Now she's gone. Ravus is gone. The Order is gone, and I am free!
You're not free, Dagan. You're alone.
Why are you here when your true enemy is out there? How could you let the galaxy fall to this unworthy machine of an empire? You think yourself a survivor, but you are a failure!
They haven't beaten us. Not yet.
Now who is blinded by the past?
I really like this little interaction here, highlighting once again how both Cal and Dagan are driven to do what they believe is best, but just the way they both approach it isn't the best, obviously. Dagan now believing the best path forward is to start his own army on Tanalor, and rule the galaxy.
We've already got an emperor. Give us the compass.
And why would I do that?
Because I'm a father who's running out of options. And you're standing in the way of a better life for my little girl. You hand it over, or I will put you down.
What small dreams you cling to. Enough! Tanalor beckons.
The first phase of the fight is everything you learned from the other times you fought him bundled into one. But now, since you have Bo with you, you have an advantage. Not only will he attack Dakin at will, but once you break his guard, you'll be able to do this pretty cool team takedown on him. Very satisfying stuff.
You're still chained by the past.
Second phase, he just force summons a physical representation of his arm, and I like how in one look he just screws up Bode's mind, which highlights how adept he is with the Force. I think that's a pretty creative way of showcasing one's ability with the Force, and it starts to evolve his moveset in this phase. As he starts using AoEs and other projectiles, adding more variation between the two combos in his stances, dual blade and double bladed, dodging his AoE attacks with the Force Dash is ideal, but it's all warm up for you to prepare for the final fight, which showcases the more mental fortitude Dakin has. And think of just Scarecrow missions in Arkham Asylum, but an actual fight. Wait a minute, why is that not something in Arkham Knight? That actually would have been cool. I also, real quick, I just like how the fact that Dakin just knocks Bode out with a stare. Like, dude, pack it up. You're done. Third phase has Dakin spawn in clones of himself, which can be taken out easily with the Force. But since they're so aggressive, you have to be smart on when and how you want to attack Dakin. As Dakin will also throw the meanest 10-piece meal I've ever had to eat, combine that with the whole moveset we discussed prior, you have a fantastic final encounter with Dakin. He has the sauce, the memorable moveset, the whole package. Now to fully seal the deal.
Don't resist. You can't hide from me. Ah, yes. I feel it. Oh.
There are so many things I love about this final scene. Firstly, highlighting the obvious here. The score is insane. So addicting to hear. While it may come across goofy for some that Cal just turned to Centauri Kree, as we established, this is all illusion based by the Force. Initially, he's using Cal's fear, but eventually, Cal learns to use Dakin's fear against him.
I will not return. You're lost. You've strayed from the path. And you are no Jedi.
With Dak and Gara defeated, Cal, understandably, is left pondering his actions. But it leads him to make an actual decision, to use Tanalor as a haven for the hidden path. However, Bode is questioning the idea, thinking about his daughter more than anything. But we have a common goal, so that is what matters. We leave Bode to his machinations and head back to Jedha with the compass. We head back to Jedha with the final compass, and Ina Cordova can fix this one, now giving us a chance to sit down before the final stages of the game. As we have established, Cal wants to help the hidden path by using Tanalor as a safe haven, but also a place to build a force to take on the Empire. Very much the thing that remained the same about the character is not hiding, but taking the fight to the Empire.
Okay, here you go, round two. What do you think?
Strong.
It's very sweet.
You'll get used to it.
You see her. Why don't you join us on Tanalor? There's no better home for the Archive or the Hidden Path. Look, whatever the future holds, we can face it together.
Yes. It's a new path for all of us. Cal, Master Tapal would be proud of the Jedi you've become.
I had a good teacher.
Everyone, the hidden path has found a new home. To Tanalor.
Tanalor!
Bode is very apprehensive on the idea, but they both seemingly find a compromise, leaving both Cal and Merrin to finally take a step forward together, which while I was a bit conflicted on an element about it earlier, it still feels earned here, especially considering Bode's talk with Cal and the Lucrehulk.
Desert at night seems to stretch on forever.
And there is beauty in emptiness.
Now you sound like a Jedi.
You got a few things right.
Not everything. Look, the Order's gone. It's time to leave it behind. And I know what I want now.
Took you long enough.
The next day, you're welcomed with a beautiful sunrise, marking a new chapter going forward, an ideally positive one, and we are ready for our next move. We meet Ina Cordova and learn that the compass actually works and we can move on to next steps.
Master Cordova, you did it.
Imperial forces coming in from all sides. They found us.
Get your people out. Hold them off as long as I can.
Bode. I'm really sorry about this.
Oh. Son. Son, you don't have to do this.
No!
Some people, including myself, may have already figured out that Bode will betray us, but setting the Empire on the hidden path, killing Master Cordova, why? We don't get time to ponder on this. We only have one set goal now, to get the compass back, which leads us to one of the best set pieces from this duology of games. The orchestration being responsive to how this chase plays out, going through the Empire's forces. Such great highlights throughout this section, and the way it ends is the cherry on top.
Why? Why, Bode? For this! We fought for that together, and you're just gonna hand it to the Empire? I'm not giving it to the Empire. You killed Master Cordova. Cal, you don't have time for this fight. Something terrible is coming for that archive. Listen to your instincts. You know I'm right. What have you done? If you want to keep your family safe, you get them out of there. Right now. What have you done? You can't be. You're not the only one who survived.
Bode is the Jedi survivor. This reveal recontextualizes all of his actions throughout the entire game, giving Cal the blaster, making him abandon his code, pushing Cal to be with Merrin, and like literally pushing him off here. Everything now starts to crash down. If Dagan was the one who set up the pins, it was Bode who struck it all down. But the game doesn't stop giving here. Playing as Cere, you do get the impression that she is going to die, but you get to feel how powerful she is. You get well acquainted with her kit very quickly, given how many enemies the game throws at you. The set piece is gorgeous as well, the music orchestrated straight out of the movies.
The walkers will breach the perimeter soon.
The way the music revolves around the progression of the mission and your actions feels like you're playing straight out of a movie, if that makes sense. You get the sense that you're in this final stand, not watching it in some cutscene happening, but you're interacting with the scene, and it's amazing. There's a sense that you are running out of time, that it's all building to something. Cere needs to get the codes for the hidden path before escaping, and then, well, the game doesn't disappoint.
BD-1, take this to the Mantis. I'll meet you at the rendezvous point. Go. Now.
It was said before the game's launch that there'll be another Darth Vader level reveal here, but I didn't think it'll actually be another Darth Vader reveal. Vader's boss fight consists of the player having to parry, and you get the feeling that you cannot escape him. You have to fight him, which really helps put you in the shoes of Cere. He has an insane lock-on, so dodging constantly isn't going to do much. But it's hard to be afraid when you can't get around the cool factor that you actually get to fight Darth Vader.
Stands. The Inquisitorius continues its work. And I have come for you.
The way his armor gets more destroyed as you progress through the phases. With each phase becomes more and more aggressive. But this here is Cere's moment. All the flashbacks, it wasn't forced development. It was building up the memories of her to establish that connection Cal and Cere have. Her arc from the first game with Trilla and struggling with the dark side to now facing the embodiment of that darkness, it's executed perfectly. Tragedy has never looked so good in Star Wars. No words, just the acting and the music speaking for itself for 2 minutes. And of course, with this game being about family, Cal and the remaining Mantis crew plan to get their get back.
Let's faint. BD, dial it in. Nova Garon system.
Wait a minute. Why would Bo take a detour?
He's got a daughter. Maybe that's where she lives.
We could catch him there. This feels like a trap.
Yeah, it does. So what do you think? Do we risk it?
I don't see what choice we got.
For Seer and Master Cordova, I will mask our approach.
Okay. You two grab some seed. I got the con.
For Seer.
This planet is very similar to Ilum. It's icy, white setting, and it's a pretty linear in its structure.
Ice. Reminds me of Ilum. You've been through a lot, huh?
Given the fact that this is an Imperial home base, you fight some of its toughest enemies here pretty consistently, in unique combat scenarios that make coming through each section a fresh challenge every time. Now, what's weird about this section is that it's pushing for this idea of stealth and not being caught by too many people, but then it forces you to be caught. I would have liked to have an opportunity to avoid being swarmed by a bunch of enemies, instead of me being forced into it anyway. Eventually you lose the tail and you go through an event which leads you to the head security officer.
Cal Kestis. I'd assumed the first time we met you'd be strapped to an interrogation chair.
I've heard that before. Still weird. Get on the comms and call off the base alert.
Or what? You're a Jedi. I know what you were capable of. And what you were not.
On the comms. Now.
This is Commander Denvik. The Jedi has been neutralized. All units stand down until further notice. Satisfied?
I'm here for Bode Akuna.
How did you find this place?
A locator beacon on Bode's ship.
Uncharacteristically careless. His reports indicate you two have grown quite close since Courasant.
You're the one who sent him to infiltrate my team.
Correct. Bode has been my weapon for some time. Quite effective. Unlike those armored abominations in the Inquisitorius.
So it's true. Seer's dead because of you.
No. The Jedha operation is still months away.
You're lying. The Empire burned the archives, led by Darth Vader.
Lord Vader. I have to stop this while I still can! Don't you see? Bode lured you here to destroy me! They're coming! Dead man, let's...
In classic Star Wars fashion though, we take his clothes and we use it to get through security. Which is pretty interesting as we get to learn more about the conflict between the ISB agents and the Inquisitors. I appreciate that, as this is really an untapped part of Star Wars we don't really see. Getting past that, we finally arrive at Bode's quarters, and it's here where the game presents a bit about Bode's family, through Force Echoes. You can't miss them as the game forces you to interact with them to progress to the next cutscene so they can properly introduce.
This is the holo that Dagon was watching. Sorry. You scared me. You must be Kata. I'm Cal. And this is BD1.
It's nice to meet you.
Where's your dad, Kata?
He said to pack for a trip. You don't work here, do you?
No. You're the first person to figure that out.
Are you really a Jedi?
Yeah. I am.
I like this scene a lot. It's like a little calm before the storm. We get introduced to Kata, who's essentially the heart of these last hours of the game. It further complicates the conflict that we have with Bode.
This Mookie? Kinda looks like me.
A little. My mama gave him to me.
Katja. Did your dad tell you where he's taking you?
It was supposed to be a surprise. But you got here a little sooner than I expected. Come here, Kata.
I really like this scene's direction, as we get a really clear-cut answer as to who Bode was and who he's become. He was essentially a Jedi spy who went into hiding, found love, lost that love, and made a deal with the ISB to be a double agent. These one-to-one scenes help highlight the similarities between Cal and Bode, but also very quickly establishes the differences.
You were lying to us from the very start.
Tanalor was a way out for both of our families. You were gonna give it to the hidden path. A bunch of strangers.
And you were gonna sacrifice thousands of people to save yourself. You're a monster, Bode.
I'm a father. The first time I held her, I saw the entire galaxy in her eyes. You can't understand.
I understand betrayal. And that you lured me here to take down this base. Right.
Well, fighting the Empire is what you do best.
Run! Orders! He's armed! Shoot to kill! Kill that Jedi! Bode!
Get out of my way!
Embracing the darkness is exactly what this game needed. It changes Cal's moveset. All the force abilities you have are now extremely more powerful, but it does come with a caveat. This mode is only usable in the single blade stance, so if you didn't upgrade the single blade stance, you are cooked, as you can't use the extensive moveset, as you'd just be better off using the force abilities, which can one-shot enemies with ease. Simple solution: reset all the skills. We are now a single blade main for now. Embrace the Darkness does, however, recontextualize Cal's soul ability. Remember there was discussion on this ability, how it's been shown to be a dark side ability in media. But looking back on when Cal first uses it in Fallen Order, out of fear of using someone he cares about, to now using it out of anger to go after someone he hates. It's honestly a phenomenal recontextualization of what we know about the path to the dark side, and this chase allows us to feel it with every hit, force ability, throwing waves at you, the destruction you can orchestrate, and that ending very satisfyingly our short but sweet time in Nova Gap.
They use me as a distraction.
Damn you! Go on, Jedi. Do it! Do it! Rather you than Lord Vader.
Who is this?
He sent Bode after our team. My crew. Cordova.
Fear!
They're all dead because of him!
Cal! This is what Bode wants. I know you are in pain, but this is not you! The Empire has taken enough from us! I will not lose you two!
He won't.
See you on the Mantis.
Give the Inquisitors my regards.
Bode escapes, but not all is lost yet. We learn of another way to Tanalor. Essentially, the message that Dak and Garo was reading back on Koboh was stolen by Bode. Bode took it and brought it to Nova Garon, and then we took it from him on Nova Garon. And it is through that message that we learn that there is another way to get to Tanalor. Essentially, we have to use the arrays that we've been going throughout the map on, right? Essentially, they will lead us up to the actual abyss. They will take us through the abyss, and it's through that we can actually get to Tanalor. It's kind of a lot to drop last minute, kind of insane, but I mean, hey, the High Republic is kind of weak, doesn't really have much, it's all just MacGuffin kind of things, kind of gamey. Lacks overall substance in compared to the other elements, but it is very solid and helps keep the game going. It helps with the flow. It isn't distracting, but it's just there. It doesn't do anything that makes me think. With that being said, it now leads us to go to Tanalor. Z will stay behind, focusing on the arrays, while Grease will navigate us through the abyss itself. And for all intents and purposes, it actually looks quite beautiful. It's like a ship being surrounded by a storm, like the ones that go in water. And it's actually really cool as we get to see the Mantis crew working together as a crew, which is something we don't really get to see much in this duology of games. And it ends in one of my favorite usage of a classic comedic gag that I've seen in a while.
Wait a minute! Are you crazy? If you jump into hyperspace blind, they'll be picking up pieces of the Mantis all over the outer rim.
Do you trust me?
You know I do, Cal. Let her ride.
Now.
You did it, you three-armed son of a gundark!
Well, at least none of us lost our cool. Huh. Wow. I hope it's worth it.
Tanalor is as beautiful as we saw back when we connected with Dagon, way back when, like over an hour and a half ago. And there is nothing to the planet beyond what we saw. All that matters is getting to Bode. But in between that, we are introduced to Ghost Star.
Do you hear that?
Gotcha.
Which is such a compelling use of music for a game. It's not something in a forced cutscene. It's something the player can choose to stop and listen for themselves, and I always stop and put the controller down to fully take it in. This song was written by the lead writer of Survivor, Danny Homan. It's clearly something very personal to him, and the fact it's implemented the way it is increases its already powerful impact. The title alone, Ghost Star, is a star that has reached the end of its lifespan, but the light can still be seen long after due to how fast light travels. I don't need to explain it anymore, the lyrics should speak for themselves.
Ghost star, silent in the sky. Now I start to wonder why. Show me your light. I've waited all night. Ghost star, won't you sing with me?
The game doesn't have to do much convincing at this point to make me feel for Kata, to not feel some mixed feelings about the situation as much as Cal does. It's impressive that the events of Nova Garon to this moment on Tanalor perfectly convey the mixed feelings Cal must have wanting to kill Bode, but also not wanting to take a father away from a child.
Said I'd never see you again. What are you doing here?
Kata, your father stole something very important. We're gonna ask him to give it back.
Will you show us the way?
Okay. Follow me.
I do want to comment on Bo's behavior here, as he seems dejected. He may have had a similar vision to Cal when he was on Bogano from the first game, as he seems to have lost all sense of reasoning, perhaps fully turning to the dark side.
Kata! How did you get here?
It wasn't easy.
You shouldn't have followed us.
Papa, don't!
Stay back, Kata. This is the only way to keep you safe.
She will be safe. I promise, Bode. But listen to me. It's over.
Lay down your weapons.
This planet will be a haven for those hunted by the Empire, including Kata and you. But you have to surrender now.
Go outside, Kata.
Listen to them, please!
I will decide what's best for my family!
Bode is very much a bag of tricks. He throws out grenades and uses blasters to keep you at a distance, while also being aggressive, very quickly closing the gap on you, and has delayed saber attacks, so it may be smart to dodge, but he has a strong defense meter, so it's important to consider parrying him as well. It's also in this phase where Marin will be actively helping you, but gets easily dispatched towards the end of it, which quickly leads on to the second phase, which has Bode utilize more unblockable attacks. He kinda plays cowardly here, mostly utilizing his blaster, and it's a bitch to fight against. Now it's worth talking about the stakes of this final fight. Bode is very clearly powerful. Kata is here, so it adds more stakes to the fight. It's also a really raw fight, the choreography really hitting home here. This leaving Cal no reason to hold back. Same with Bode apparently, as now with his guns gone, he is using ranged force attacks, which you can avoid using the force dash, or you can use it to close a gap as there may be an opening for you. But you have to watch the animations, as depending on the angle he sets up the saber is how you're supposed to dodge. His lightsaber combos have changed, starting with very slow startup, but they lead up to fast, unrelenting combos that you can't be comfortable with pairing, as sometimes he mixes in unblockables. The entire fight itself doesn't have the most memorable backdrop, but the direction the fight goes from up on top to both the characters toppling down to the lower floors, to seeing Cal and Marin attempting to subdue Bode. Also Marin having to save Kata to build tension. It's all very raw, very personal. It's all about both Cal and Bode's obsessive desire to protect what they love, which in the end brings them both apart.
Don't put this on your daughter.
Bode, we know what it's like to grow up alone.
Please, listen to them, Papa!
All right. And when the Empire comes, will you be able to protect my little girl? I'm sorry, Kata. I tried.
No, Papa!
Stay back!
No final words, just ending it. One for Nova, another for Seer. Bode wasn't corrupted. There was no need to save him, no need to understand him. He did what he did out of his own will. The game ends with leaving the characters and us to grieve a bit, as a lot has been thrown at us. And we are just left to be silent. The funeral scene is perhaps one of my favorite endings throughout all of Star Wars. There is no words, just people being together, mourning in silence. How can you give a speech after the loss of family or other Jedi when you killed him and he killed them? This scene has us reflecting on everything just as Cal does as we watch the time pass.
My life on Bracca. You let me walk my own path when I needed to. You taught me what it truly means to be a Jedi. Now you're gone. We will continue your legacy, Seer. We will build something that can outlast the Empire. I promise you that. I promise. But I'm scared. I almost lost myself. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready for what comes next.
Guide her through the darkness.
The game ends open-endedly, as despite your efforts there is still work to be done. We have a legacy to fulfill. We come back to the Koboh thanks to the compass and we see a Star Destroyer in the planet's atmosphere. Pyloon's saloon is more or less lifeless. You find there is less people. You can actually say goodbye to some of them as they try to move on from the Empire. I like how this is contextualized. It reminds me of how the first God of War had snow for Fimble winter that led into Ragnarok. Here, it serves as a reminder that more work needs to be done. 2 steps forward, 3 steps back kind of deal. And yeah, this essentially is the endgame of Survivor. You may have some Jedi puzzles to do, collectibles, other points of interest to explore, bosses to fight, Force Echoes to collect or restore, which leads to some of the most ridiculous challenges this game has. And there's also the bounty hunter missions which you most definitely didn't do, mainly because of the fact that you probably weren't able to play it at launch. I mentioned it before, but these missions are very fun. It's a shame that people had issues with them at launch. But of course, when beating them all, the biggest highlight is meeting Boba Fett and having a standoff of him and Cage. He says few words and is all business. Just in this one scene gives more Boba Fett vibes than his entire show, the mannerisms and everything.
I'm just taking in the view before I take in my bounty.
Suit yourself.
But there's also a new set of collectibles I want to highlight, dedicated to Bode. Rehashing the old steps you've taken throughout the game, you can interact with Force Echoes from him. You can hear more about his dealings with the ISB commander, Davik, hear more about how conflicted he was throughout the game, how he saw Cal and Marin's relationship and used it for his own benefit.
I can't believe how blind I've been. I know how to turn him, it's so obvious. Poor bastard's in love.
Going back to Tanalor, you can actually hear both Bode and Kata sing Ghost Star together. It's very moving now, after his death, after the fact that we actually have to raise his daughter, and the fact that something so powerful is hidden like this through exploration is something I really love. And honestly is the perfect culmination of the heart of Jedi Survivor. Jedi Survivor had a rough launch, but goddamn it doesn't stop me from loving it for what it is. From the way the combat and the exploration have evolved to the strong storytelling and its ideas within it, not just being more of the same but actually bringing something new to Star Wars and the genre as a whole. It is truly innovative in a way a true next-gen sequel should be. And it doesn't get enough praise, especially considering it was made in barely 3 years during a pandemic. That alone is something truly special, and why Jedi Survivor is a textbook example of what a sequel should be. Thank you for watching this video, and thank you for making it this far. I know this is different, and you probably haven't seen me before, or knew that I was. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you're here, and I appreciate it. This video took a lot out of me. Was a span of multiple phases of my life, of writing the script and recording the script, recording the video and all that stuff. There was a lot of things that happened behind the scenes. I was moving, I was going to different places, I got a new capture card, I got new computers, I had to let go of old things. It was a lot has happened. And this is a result of that, and I hope it did something for you, as it did something for me. Thank you for all the support. It means a lot. There's just been, it's weird. It's weird because I just don't take the time to think about it. Now I'm thinking about it on camera, and it's just, anywho, thank you, truly. There's more to come, and I'll see you next time.